I stuck my Combustion ink predictive thermometer so that I knew exactly when they were at the right temperature, brought them up to 110 degrees, and while we rebuilt the fire, they rested and then we finished them off to give them a nice sear for that texture and color and flavor. Hey everyone, how's it going? It is a beautiful Seattle summer day. We're gonna be smoking some pork chops. So this technique is one that I initially developed for smoking some big T-bone steaks, T-bones, porterhouses. The idea is that we're going to slow smoke them over the cool side of a 2-level fire. And then we're gonna sear them over the hot side. So it's almost as if you were doing a reverse sear. You know, a reverse sear is where you start your meat, your steak in a cooler oven and then finish it by searing it. It's called the reverse sear because it's sort of the opposite of how you normally would do it or traditionally would do it, which is to start it hot and finish it cooler. So the idea here is that we're gonna start it nice and low and slow, get some smoke flavor into it, and then finish it with a sear. So we get a nice even cook and plenty of smoky flavor. All right, so I'm seasoning these chops pretty generously with salt. I've got some white pepper just because we forgot to bring the black pepper mill, but you could use either kind of pepper you'd like. These pork chops, by the way, these are rib chops. I got them from Beast and Cleaver up in Ballard here. They leave the fat cap on there, which I think is really nice. You know, pork, just like beef, it varies in quality quite a bit. You do want really nice, thick cut chops for this though. If you do thinner chops, you don't really get enough time for the smoke to penetrate. So the key with this recipe, with this technique, is that we season the whole things, including the edges. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stick some skewers through here. Let's do 1, 2, and 3. All right, and we'll flip the whole thing over, season that other side. And then I'm gonna spread them out on these skewers just a little bit. And the idea here is that by spreading them out like this, we're going to ensure that there's plenty of space for the smoke to really penetrate all around them. And by leaving them standing upright like this, they're also gonna cook more evenly. So if we were to lay them flat on the cooler side of the grill, you could do that. But what ends up happening is that even over indirect heat, you end up cooking the bottom a little more than the top. This way they cook nice and evenly. So over here, I've got a fire going. It's a indirect fire. So I built a little pile of coals over here. These are actually left over from the previous thing I was cooking, but you could start with about 12 to 20 coals or so, and a couple of chunks of wood. What kind of wood is this?
God, I don't know.
Does it say in the bag? Where's
cherry?
the bag?
I bet it's cherry.
Cherry, oh yes, it is cherry wood. I picked cherry wood because I thought, oh, cherry and pork. Although to be honest, I personally don't taste a huge difference between various types of smoking woods. I know probably barbecue aficionados do, but I personally don't. So I'm gonna lay these with the bone, with the fat cap down, the sort of insulated side down, with the bone, the ribs pointing towards the fire, so that the most delicate part of the meat, which is the leaner eye of that rib cut, is the furthest away from the fire, so that doesn't stand a chance of overcooking. Meanwhile, the fattier side, over by where the ribs were cut off, that side's going to render a little bit more because it's closer to the fire here. So I'm gonna take my thermometer. This is a Combustion ink predictive thermometer. It's really nice because it has sensors up and down its length. So you don't really have to worry too much about whether you're getting the tip of the thermometer exactly in the center of the pork chop. It will tell you what the center of the pork chop is. As long as the thermometer is running through it, it'll figure out which sensor is closest to the center and tell you what the center of the pork chop is. It'll also, based on how fast the chop is cooking, it's going to predict how long it takes to get to whatever temperature you set it to. So I am going to cook my pork chops a nice, little on the medium side of medium rare. You know, a lot of people are a little bit squeamish about rare pork. Pork these days is quite safe to eat. There hasn't been a case of trichinosis for a long time. So as long as you're getting your pork from a good supplier and you're keeping it nice and cold and you're making sure that you're following all your sort of basic food safety guidelines, like such as not touching your salt after you've handled raw pork, you're gonna be safe. Pork is just as safe as beef to eat at medium rare, and it's gonna end up a lot juicier. So I'm aiming to take it off the cooler side of the grill at around 110, 115 degrees or so, and then I'll finish it off on the hot side of the grill. All right, so we'll be back when that is done. All right, so our pork chops are at temp now. So what I'm gonna do is, these coals have died down a little bit while the pork chops are cooking, so I'm gonna add just a little bit of fresh coal on top of there so that we have a really nice blazing hot fire for when we sear them. It doesn't take a ton. Just about that much is good. So I'm gonna wait for these coals to get hot, pull these chops off for now, wait for that fire to get nice and blazing hot, and then we will get them back on there to sear. All right, so I'll be back in a few minutes. Our fire is going. We're nice and hot over here. Our pork chops have rested a little bit, so I'm gonna take the skewers out. And now all we're trying to do with this fire here is get the outsides nice and crusty. All right, so we're gonna let them cook on both sides. We'll flip them a couple times. We'll make sure the edges get nice and crusty, and then we should be all good to go. You know, if you wanted to, if you had the wherewithal, which I didn't, and if you had your druthers about you, you could also, you know, while the pork chops are resting or you're building your fire, you could also do something like, say, grill some peaches on there or grill some apples on there, so have something a little bit sweet and a little bit fiery to go with the pork chops. But I think they're gonna be delicious on their own. All right, so I'm gonna let these cook a little bit and we'll be back. So see, if you're starting to drip a lot of fat and you get these little flare-ups like that, you can just flip your pork chops over to the cooler side of the grill for a second, let that fire die down a little bit, and bring them over. But you know, so long as you sort of keep them moving around, you're gonna develop a nice crust. There's a lot of advice out there that tells you not to flip your meat as it cooks. It works fine if you don't flip it, but you'll actually get a sort of more even cook if you do flip it. Either way, it's fine. You know, my basic rule of thumb is like, don't question the person who's near the flaming pit. If you want to just, you know, do what your dad taught you, do what your aunt taught you or your sister taught you, just leave them be until they're seared on one side. But if you're the kind of person who likes to sort of like futz around with their meat as it cooks, you can feel free to flip as much as you want, and it'll actually cook a little bit better. All right, look at that crackle.
What cut of the pig is the chop?
The chop comes from the ribs, so this is the equivalent of like a ribeye. You know, same muscle group that that a strip steak comes from. So it's the loin. You know, essentially a chop is a chop is anything. You can have a shoulder chop, you can have a ham chop, you can have a. But when you're talking pork chops, generally you're talking cut from the ribs. So each one of these is a single rib chop here. There's a whole rib bone in there. All right, I think we're good on here. A lot of times, you know, when you buy a pork chop from like the supermarket, you're gonna find that they've trimmed away almost all the fat because, I don't know, I guess some people don't like the pork fat, but for me, this part is the part that has the most flavor. It's the equivalent of the, well, this would be the equivalent of the decal on a rib steak, this part that comes around, wraps around here. And then this would be the equivalent of where sort of the short ribs are, which I find have a ton of good flavor. Let's cut into one of these. Tender and delicious. Ooh, look at that. Nice medium rare center. Let's see how it tastes. It's a little bacony in flavor, I guess, from that cherry smoke, you know? The fat melts away, super juicy. So this one actually has a little bit of a smoke ring, you can see. See the edges are pink. That smoke ring comes from when the nitrates in the smoke fix the color of the myoglobin. So smoked meats generally have that smoke ring around them. I'm surprised that even with that short smoking time, this one's got it.
Do this for you. Ooh, it's like a wet chicharron. Ooh. Michael says, ooh.
All right, so smoked pork chops. The way we did this was I started with some thick cut pork chops, 1 rib each. You could also do this with like a two rib chop if you really want it nice and thick. We seasoned them on the outside with salt and pepper. I built a small fire with a couple of wood chunks in there. I stuck the chops on skewers so that I could stand them upright. I stuck my my Combustion Predictive Thermometer in them so that I knew exactly when they were at the right temperature, brought them up to 110 degrees, took them off, let them rested, and while we rebuilt the fire, they rested, and then we finished them off to give them a nice sear for that texture and color and flavor. And yeah, that's it. Guys, gals, non-binary pals. See you later. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. You can find the full article and recipe along with bonus content and my newsletter for free on my Patreon. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel for more videos like this, or my alternate channel, Kenji Lopez Main, for my dining content. And follow me on Instagram at Kenji López-Alt for daily updates. You can also get signed and personalized copies of any of my books. That's The Food Lab, The Walk, or my children's book, Every Night is Pizza Night, shipped from Book Larder here in Seattle. Find the links to all of this, as well as all of the tools I used in today's video, in the description below. Thanks.